I'm Brett with Indie Comics Dispatch and welcome you to Season 2. This is Broadcast from the Dispatch.
If you got a story and you want the world to know it, if you think you ready and you ain't afraid to show it, throw your hands up high, yeah, we might stand out. We always representing cause that's what it's all about. We always representing cause that's what it's all about. And if you love some indie comics, let me hear you shout. Just stay tuned, what's the story? Had to get that every time a brand new indie comic from the Dispatch.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of Broadcast from the Dispatch. I am Brett with Indie Comics Dispatch, your host. Couple updates. Tier is not here for Season 2, so I did want to update everybody with that. He's off working on Silvers. He's got a lot of stuff going on, and so you need to check that out and see all the different stuff he's got launching. Totally busy and kicking it right now, kicking butt right now. So check that out. 501c3, if you remember, we did a little Kickstarter to become an official 501c3 organization, and that is going well. We have our board of directors lined up. I have one more announcement to make on our board of directors as soon as we get final approval from the other directors on that. But another announcement is coming. We are incorporated in the state of Georgia as a nonprofit corporation, and we are waiting on the stuff from the federal government to be official 501c3. So with COVID, everything is slowed down, everything, including nonprofit approvals. So bear with us. We will get there by the end of this year. So just wait for that announcement to come down the line as well. Kickstarter Fulfillment is almost completely done. If you haven't heard from me, check your email because you probably have and you probably didn't realize it. I'm waiting on a couple people to send me their t-shirt sizes. I'm waiting on a couple people to send me images for their honorary team member portrait. The coaching sessions have been sent out, so we just need to hear back from people. So if you're out there watching and thinking, hey, I supported the Dispatch but I haven't heard anything about my reward, check your email, check your Kickstarter messages. I bet you it's probably there. So without any further ado, let's jump into tonight's episode because I'm excited. We have indie comic legends. I consider them legends, and by the end of tonight, you will too. I do need to say we had hoped to have Dr. Turtel Onli here. He could not make it. He was planning on making it, planning on being here, and then last minute something came up and he couldn't be here this evening. So we will catch up with him sometime soon. But we do have two wonderful guests tonight, and we're going to talk about indie comics and the kind of heyday, the early 90s of indie comics all the way to now. And so it should be a great episode. If you're out there watching this, feel free to ask questions, drop them in the comments. We will see them. And please share the stream. Sharing is caring. If you share the stream to various groups, it helps us and it helps these gentlemen tonight get more viewers too on their projects as well. First up, just because he's first in my sheet here, Mr. Reggie Byers. For over 35 years, Reggie Byers has professionally created comics and children's books. In 1985, he came into the comic industry illustrating Robotech comics for Comico and self-published his manga-inspired series, Shuriken. Am I saying that right, Reggie?
What's that? What,
Comico? Shuriken.
Oh, actually was the comical part. It's Kamiko.
I always do that.
But,
man.
Yeah, everybody pronounces it comico. But Shuriken, you pronounced that correctly.
Well, of course, I'd get the hard one.
Yeah,
Which is currently on Kickstarter. Shuriken is currently on Kickstarter. After 30 years, you can go support that right now tonight. It's fully funded, but we still want you to go support it. Reggie has also created other comic books over the years: Jam Quacky, Crescent, the Bible-themed Kids of the King, and Afro Boy and Puff Girl. Reggie continues to strive to create comics and entertain, educate, and edify the young and young at heart. Reggie, welcome back to the Dispatch, sir.
Hey, Brett, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. I love having you on here. You were one of our earlier guests when I was doing one-on-one interviews before we kind of launched the weekly live. And so
Yeah,
it's always an honor to talk to you. It's
that
always
was fun.
you and this next gentleman are two of, like I said, legends in my eyes in the indie comic realm. So next up, Mr. Roosevelt Pitt.
Greetings,
Ro-
greetings.
Roosevelt is a 20-year plus veteran author, designer, publisher, and entrepreneur. Pitt is owner of Amara Entertainment Incorporated, an innovative company created to produce and distribute ethnic superhero comic books to fill the void left by the lack of positive African American heroes in the marketplace.
Yes, sir. That's
Roosevelt, thank you so much for being here.
you're quite welcome. I appreciate you having me. I've been looking forward to this for the past week or so. So
Me too. Actually, longer than that for me, but it's been on my brain for a while. So, gentlemen, we've done the official intros, but tell us more about yourselves. How did you become a comic creator? Roosevelt, let's start with you.
well, for me, I've always been a comic book fan for years. I mean, I was back in the day, and I'm sure Mr. Byers can confirm that back in our time, there were no real comic book shops. They were called newsstands, okay? And you walk around the corner and you grab a soda and you hopefully will find your favorite comic on the spinner rack.
That's
You
right.
know?
That's right.
So back in my day, everything was few and far between, meaning you have to get there early when the store opened if you want to get that favorite comic. Okay? So for me, I always went to the newsstand or the magazine shops looking for anyone that looked like me. And that was always the most important thing at that time. Representation. But as time went on, I realized that representation isn't always what it's cracked up to be. Because once you read the story, what are you really gaining? What are you really digesting as a Black person when you read those stories? Is that character positive? Does he have good morals? Is he a good person? Or is he truly only out for self? So as time went on, I realized personally that there really wasn't any Black superhero that truly represented what I wanted to see in myself. Now, Superman, on the other hand, I will tell you straight up, that was one of my favorite superheroes. Why? Because he was majestic. He flew. And everyone trusted him. He never lied, quote unquote, unless he's Clark Kent. Clark Kent lied a lot.
Lied all the time. I'll be right back.
but Superman, he had this mythological, godly presence that no matter where he was, people recognized his greatness. I didn't see that in Black comic books back in the day, other than maybe Black Panther. And Black Panther was great, mind you, but I didn't relate to him because I never was an African prince. You follow me? So for me, that resonated with me as I became older and decided that I wanted to really produce a superhero who's Black, who can represent the greatness that we are as Black people by focusing on our creativity, our history beyond being enslaved. That's what we see so much in media. But what about the Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, the Dr. Henry Clark, the Amos Wilson, those Black people who were scholars, those Black people who were inventors. How often do we hear about Black inventors, such as the one, and excuse me, I do forget his name and off the top of my head right now, but there's so many Black inventors who created the traffic light, blood
Garrett
plasma.
Morris.
Thank you.
Garrett Morris.
The list goes on. We rarely hear about those great Black people, foundational Black American people in history, but definitely not in comics. So I personally found it my mission to do that, so that when hopefully Black kids, Black adults read my content, they will not only learn something, but feel elevated about being who they are in this skin that's most of our history has been presented as a detriment, but in fact, it's greatness. And that's what prompted me and continues to push me to create the content that I do create.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Reggie?
Fantastic. Yeah, well, with me, I like Roosevelt, I grew up, reading comic books that were, very poorly represented as far as I as a black person, as a black child. But of course, like most children that read comic books, I gravitated towards the hero that I could relate most to. And as far as I can remember, good gosh, as far back as 8 years old, it was always Batman. Because it was like, he didn't have any powers, I mean, he had the Lucci to afford everything he needed to do to look like he had powers. I mean, my history of Batman goes back to the whole, Adam West, Burt Ward days. I'd go home and I would have goosebumps watching that animated intro of them coming at you. I would lose my mind. I'd be like, Mom, leave me alone. Dad, leave me alone. I'm watching Batman right now. And those cliffhangers, man. So as I got older and started actually discovering comic books around maybe like 9-10 years old, when I realized that Batman actually was a comic book, because I didn't even know Batman was a comic book when I was watching the Adam West, episodes. I just was a collectible madman. I was, buying everything that came out on, as Roosevelt said, the rack. I would go to the local pharmacy in Norristown, and there was one thin rack, and it was like Batman, Avengers. Back then it was Charlton Comics. There's a character that I used to collect called Yang. This Chinese kung fu fighter. And I collected comic books left and right. And as I got older, right around middle school, when I realized that comic books were written and created by actual people, that's when I realized, that's something I want to do for the rest of my life, because I've always been able to draw, and I was always telling stories, wherever I was lying to my mom or coming up with a story in a comic book. I basically was like, if these books that I love buying are actually being created by people, oh gosh, well, I'm in. I'm all in. And so middle school, early high school, my friends and I who were creative and loved to draw out together and create our own characters. And my very first creation right around 10th grade was a character called Spark. It was a black girl with a white streak in her fro, and she had electrical powers. And my buddy, he drew a comic book called Indigo. And he was this guy that his face, he looked like Black Panther, but he had his hair was out. And we did a combination comic book called Spark and Indigo, with 15 pages he drew, 15 pages I drew. We stapled it together and sold them to our classmates. Man, it was crazy. But truth be told, it's like my wanting to represent myself as a black man through comics really did not happen until like around 1991, when I created Crescent. And actually, maybe before then, the black experience in my comic books was put out through Jam Quacky, because Jam Quacky the Hip Hop Duck, that comic book told the story of the black experience, but it was all anthropomorphic characters. But as far as like I said, I was inspired by wanting to get into drawing comic books and creating comic books, because I found out that they were actually created by actual creative people. That was right around middle school, early high school.
Isn't it amazing? I remember that too, around middle school, where you realize comic books are created by real people, and such a weird and then empowering experience, because you're right, your little kid brain just doesn't think of that. Right. And then when you realize that you can tell these stories too. My first character I invented, I was telling a friend about this recently, that I had completely forgot about this, was a guy named Electro Man, and he literally had a light bulb helmet on his head. I hope to get past that one day. Pop up some comments. We got Tony Cade from Challenges Games and Comics in Decatur, Georgia, right down the street from me. He's sharing the stream. Thank you, Tony. Brad didn't know it was pronounced Kamiko. Kamiko. God, I can't do it.
But when I first discovered that company, which was in Norristown, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, when I walked by it was a row home. The company was located inside a row home. And when I walked by there for the first time, they had a sign out in the yard, and that's the first thing I pronounced was Comico, But yeah.
He said, learn something new every day. You do. You do, don't you, Brad? Brad also said he has commissioned drawings of Crescent and Purge from one of his favorite indie artists. Love both characters.
All right. Woo.
All right,
And
fantastic.
Brian, my friend Brian, Wingless Comics, didn't know Reggie worked on Robotex.
Yeah, man.
Another reason these brothers are my heroes. Very good.
Much appreciated.
Well, let's talk about that, because you're right. Like I'm a bit younger than you, but probably
Oh
not
my
as much
God,
as people
he's a
think.
bit younger.
Probably not as much as people think. I am in my 40s.
I
So-
wish.
Okay, well, okay. All right.
But I didn't have a local comic book shop either. I would walk down and go to the gas station at the corner of our neighborhood and spin the rack and find my comic books. And spinning that rack,
That rap,
I found
man.
characters that represented me, right? Almost every character in that spinner was a white dude. And so when was the first time you guys saw a comic book character and you thought, aha, these guys really got it. Here's a character that really represents me.
Huh.
Well,
I think it was.
I'll let Mr.
Go
Byers
ahead,
go first.
Roosevelt.
No,
Wait,
please
wait.
go ahead. Go ahead. You already primed and ready. I can tell.
You know, it's crazy. I can't think of the character's name, but the first character that resonated with me as a black person, as a young black man, was and maybe one of you two can remember who he was. He was the and matter of fact, he was the first Legion of Superheroes member that was African American. He had a white suit on, he had a fro, and actually and unfortunately, stereotypically, he had a chip on his shoulder, and he was always angry because he was like, you know, y'all not like treating me the way everybody else should be treated. It was there were Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. It was illustrated by Mike Grell.
The Invisible
I
Kid.
can't remember that. Whatever it was, his power was through his voice.
Okay, maybe that's a different one. I remember the guy with the afro. He had like a white suit. I thought he was the Invisible Kid, but maybe that's not it. Maybe that's not it. But I do know who you're speaking of.
I'll Google it while we're talking, but yeah, but he was the first one that resonated. I'm like, oh, dude's fire. You know, I was like, I resonated with him. A lot of people would answer that question and say, oh, Black Panther. You know, but it wasn't Black Panther for me. The first one that resonated with me for real, with Tyrok. That was his name.
Oh, there you go.
Tyrok. Tyrok. He was the first African American member of the Legion of Superheroes.
You're
And
right.
I loved that character. I loved him.
Wow, for me, I'm going to go outside of the box a little bit, then I'll come back. I think all of us who grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s remember having your bowl of cereal, getting up 6 in the morning, waiting for the national anthem to play or whatever. You see the little color bars come up, and then you're ready to get started because you know the cartoons are about to hit. And for me, 6 a.m. and ended around 12 and 1 o'clock with Soul Train. Okay, so I was there in front of the TV until noon most of the time, and the reason I'm bringing it back to the forefront of our memory is that for me, a lot of the black characters that resonated with me were on cartoons, and for me it was Black Vulcan of the Justice.
Oh wow!
Okay, that's one of the first ones that I remember wanting to see that represented me well. He was smart. He wasn't necessarily like a sidekick. They brought him in. He handled his business, as they say, and he was quite prominent on the team. Okay, and what I did was I went to find someone like him in the comic book realm, and of course, one of the closest character that you can think about in DC, Black Lightning.
Black Lightning.
Okay, so Black Lightning was the one that I actually related with. He was intelligent. I think he was a teacher, if I'm correct. And he was very articulate. And he was able to harness his electrical powers in different ways to take down crime. You know, now of course it was a typical type of trope where he was in the slums and fighting drug pushers and that kind of thing. And that kind of got kind of tiring for me. At my age at that time, it was exciting to go and watch Super Friends, Justice Super Friends, see Black Vulcan, and then be able to go into the comic shop and find a representation of him in the comics, you know. And that was kind of cool for me at that particular time. And then from that point on, I branched on to other characters. such as Power Man, Luke Cage,
Luke Cage,
and Giant Man or
Yeah.
Black
Mhm.
Bias, actually, at
Yeah.
that time. So at that point, I'm like, well, there had to be more than just Black Lightning out here representing. So let me see what I can find. And that kind of helped me to launch my journey.
Very cool.
You know,
Very
you know,
cool.
I got to add. First time I fell in love, Storm.
Oh, of course.
John Byrne Storm.
John Byrne.
That was it. That's all she wrote.
David Guringer, who composed our theme song, our new season 2 theme song is composed by David Guringer. If anybody's looking for an awesome theme song for their indie comic or anything,
All right,
David does that. He's an amazing artist. He said, anybody who remembers Meteor Man?
Oh, sure.
A lot of 90 kids remember Meteor Man as their
Robert
first.
Townsend. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, believe it or not, we had a business agreement with his company or his advertising PR company. And if you have the first Purge book that I did, Meteor Man advertisement is on the back of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I'll have to go check that out.
Small world.
So there's a
Small
connection.
world.
So now you each became comic, I'm going to say publishers, even though you may disagree with that title, but you've self-published various titles, each of you, but you became publishers at a time before digital comics. So a lot of guys getting in the game now, they can put together a digital comic, they can put together the art digitally, they can letter digitally, and they can distribute it digitally.
Mhm.
We have apps popping up all over the place that feature solely digital comics.
Mhm.
What was it like getting your first book published before the age of digital, and what roadblocks did you face?
Mm, mm, mm.
Wow.
That was a
Do we have
joke.
that much time?
What you say? What you remember? What you say?
I'm asking, do we have that much time?
Oh, I thought you quoted Michael Jackson. I thought you said, "Do you remember the time?"
Oh, you know what? That too. Sometimes we get up in age. Sometimes things slip. But
Yeah, right.
uh,
Oh man.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got so many stories.
I know.
I'll throw off some, and I'll be brief to give Mr. Byers and Reggie opportunity. Let me start off with this. It was very precarious at some points of the first part of the journey. Why? For me personally, there was a concern if people would buy Black comics. Okay, there was a concern because the industry is predominantly white. That's the way it is. That's the way it always has been, with a few peppered Black characters here and there. So my challenge that I had to overcome is one, the fear as an entrepreneur. Is anyone going to buy this? That's the first thing I learned in economics. Is there a demand? And will the demand warrant you producing this book, putting the money and time and effort in order to sell it? So what I did personally along my journey, I was in college. I went to North Carolina A&T Agricultural Technical State University at HBCU. And when I decided that I wanted to publish books, my own book, featuring Black leads, I actually took to the streets with my Walkman and a recorder. And I started interviewing people randomly on the street. And my first question, or my only question was, or my leading question, I should say, was name me a Black superhero.
Oh, wow.
And even today, that can be a challenge.
Sure can be.
So when I asked the question, I got zip, zero, nada. But I said, well, name me a white superhero. Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Flash. The list went on and on. Thor, Spider-Man. For days. And that for me was my the highlight of my journey. Because I felt that if they don't know a Black superhero, when will they ever? And who will make that happen? So I took it on my own personal mission to make sure that a Black superhero would resonate with the public nationwide and globally. And so that for me was part of the catalyst or the launching mechanism that I needed to say what I'm doing has purpose. It's needed. And furthermore, when I look at the superheroes that I did find that were Black superheroes, again, as I said earlier in the program, wasn't what I wanted to be represented as. And I needed, or I felt the need, desire, and the purpose to do better. You know, so, and it wasn't easy. I sold books out of my car trunk. Okay?
Old school way.
Yeah, old school. I went
That's right.
and drove to television stations to get on TV to actually sell my book. Because one thing I did learn about media, and it's still true today, people trust the media. If it's on television or if it's on some kind of media outlet, automatically has credibility. So I knew that once I was able to get on TV, that would give me the credibility. So I combined that with newspaper articles and front page. And just for those who don't know, Purge is Winston-Salem, North Carolina, official, one and only superhero.
That's for something.
So that's an accomplishment that I was able to take. And I was I was able to get on Newsweek, USA Today.
Wow.
I sent the video to Brett. I was able to get on Entertainment Tonight. All of that was accomplished through the effort and understanding, me personally, what my purpose is to create the content that Black people, all people, could be proud of. So, there you have it.
Reggie?
Oh, goodness. You know what? Now I'm going to sound like Chicken Little from that cartoon. It's like, what are we talking about? What was the question again? Because I'm like all in Roosevelt's story, man. It's like, Roosevelt, just before we went on, I went online and purchased Purge #1. I'm like, I'm all late. I'm behind. I just purchased it like an hour ago. I was like, I gotta have it. Because I saw those, the Song Brothers. Man, but look, as long as I was able to get one.
Well, it's here waiting for you, my brother.
I'm waiting on number. Look, I'm ready for #2. I don't even have #1 yet.
Oh my goodness, but #2 is working. We're getting it done. COVID slows down, but it's working. But anyway, go ahead, brother.
Fantastic. Brett, you were saying pretty much as far as just like what was it like publishing?
Yeah, to get your first book published back in the day, pre-digital, and what roadblocks did you face?
know, my thing was I was definitely at an advantage because of the fact being that my first job outside of art school, after I got out of art school, was working for Kimiko. They were right there in Norristown. I was blown away when I found out that they were a comic book company. They were gracious enough to take me on as an office employee. I mean, it was just like six young guys, publishing comic books for the first time in black and white on the independent market. And I guess I hung around and bugged them so much to get a job where, of course, there was no job available. They said, well, look, if you want to work here and learn how the industry works, how you take the process from creating the comic book to soliciting it to distributors, to getting it shipped, to getting, I learned the whole process of how to publish a comic book on the independent market while I was working there as what I would call the office boy. And the first experience of seeing a comic book coming back from the printer was not even mine. It was Primer #1 that Kimiko published. And the crazy part was the more exciting book was Primer #2, which had Grendel on the cover. Because at that time I was the assistant editor for Primer. So seeing a book that I worked on, even though I didn't draw it or write it, I was like, I helped get this book out, and it was like Matt Wagner's first piece. It blew me away to see these books come in from UPS and you ripping them open and see these actual physical comic books. And when I started making enough money working for them, I said, you know what, I need to publish my own book. It's like I know how to do it now, and at the time, as Roosevelt was saying, that question went on in my mind like, well, if I'm going to create a comic book of my own and publish it, now I've got the wherewithal to do it. What am I going to do? Am I going to go ahead and publish Spark? But will she sell? She's a black female character. Will it sell? And at that time, I was so smitten by manga at the time, Japanese comics, which the only time you could even find one is if you went to New York.
Mhm.
At the time I was reading, I wasn't even translated in English, it was still in Japanese. I was peeping Astro Boy, and I was peeping Captain Harlock, and it impressed upon me so much. It said, you know what, the first thing I'm going to publish is a comic book about a ninja girl. A girl that's supposed to be an assassin, but she ended up being a bodyguard because she never want to kill anybody. And that's when I created Crescent. I'm sorry, that's 10 years later. Shuriken. And so I created this comic book, and the guys at Kimiko even just guided me as far as uh, doing the pagination and creating it. And the feeling of seeing that come back from the printer was a feeling unlike any other, I'm sure, as Roosevelt can attest to. Seeing your own work printed. The walls that I had to climb over weren't that many in the beginning, because of the fact being that all the knowledge I got from Kimiko on how to get the books, how you solicit the books to the distributors. Back then, there were so many. You had Glenwood, you had, of course, Diamond, who's the only one that's left now. There were just so many different comic book distributors. You would send them a sample of the work, tell them how much the discount was, when it was going to come out, and then the orders would come in. And it was pretty easy for me. And I think only because of the fact I was joined at the hip with Kimiko, even though I published the book on my own independently. I think the difficulty was being able to be noticed out of all of the books that were already out there. Of course, everybody loved the big two, always did. And but when I put out Shuriken, I think because of the fact I was already involved with Robotech, that got the attention for my book. And I think I was just lucky in that respect, because had I not been connected with Kimiko, it'd have been a whole different story. I don't even know if I would have even had a chance to publish my own comic book at that juncture in my life. Maybe 10 years later, but not in 1985. Not on my own, I don't think.
Wow. That's amazing. I remember during our other interview, you talking about those early days of working for Kimiko. I can't say it. I just can't say it. It just doesn't happen. And yeah, you just walked into an incredible opportunity there. I remember you talking about how you got that job. So if you don't know how Reggie got that job, go listen to that first interview. It's on the YouTube page. It's a great story.
That was crazy.
So let's talk about the small press scene in the late 80s, early 90s. What was it like then in general, and how have you seen it change and evolve over the years?
When you say small press, you mean the business aspect or the production of the book? Or
the business aspect of it, not the production aspect. Yeah, like the business of it and the running of the company, the distribution, gaining followers, or not followers back then, but readers and such.
Well, for me, it was a interesting learning experience because again, there was no social media.
Mm-hmm.
The only media you had was television, radio. So I had to really be creative and utilize radio. I created a radio show for Purge.
Oh, wow.
Jams.
What?
Yes, I did that. And that was something that I utilized to further the awareness of Purge. I actually produced a animated TV pilot for Purge. Where I actually acted as one of the characters, to some dismay.
Whoa.
So there were things that I did that I hoped at the time would help elevate the character in a way that people will continue to be migrated back to the comic. Okay, and to be able to utilize those means or those particular opportunities help promote the character, the brand, and also help promote the business. But like anything else, it is what it is. Small businesses need income. And unfortunately, and I think it's still somewhat the same circumstance now, is that we're dealing with a product that is based on public opinion. They like it one day, they hate it the next. Or, or now you can be canceled if you say something that's whack. I don't know if I'm using the right terminology.
No, you are.
Okay.
Whack is timeless.
Whack is still good. Okay, all right.
Whack is timeless.
You can be canceled. So even back then, the first issue come out is hot. People love it. The second issue is hot. People love it. Third issue, lukewarm. And before you know it, so it takes money to keep a product in the forefront of people's minds back in the day, using PR firms to get you on TV and to get you on radio. I mean, it was really difficult. So if you're a small press publisher, you don't have those kind of pockets like that, like a Marvel or DC. So it did take a lot of interesting maneuvering, which is why the Ania, we may talk about that a little bit later, was quite important at that time in the 90s, where each one of us was small publishers with little capital, but we came together to look a lot larger than what we were. And we pooled our resources, money, artists that we knew, and we were able to create and do great things with Ania for a short time. We actually were pretty much head to head, as far as media-wise, as well as sales with Milestone back in the day.
Wow.
Those who remember. So it was an interesting journey, and I don't regret any of it. I learned a lot, and I think that, and Reggie, I'm assuming could confirm as well, that it wasn't easy, but we had to learn how to do with little. And that's one thing as Black people in general. We've been pretty good at doing a lot with little. And I know for a fact, if I had DC money back then,
man,
wow, Purge would be a global phenomenon.
It'd have been a wrap.
Exactly.
It'd have been a wrap.
And that's where the rubber meets the road. Is financial for most of us, or the lack thereof.
So true. So true. I would just have to piggyback on what Roosevelt just said. I mean, I really don't have anything else to add to that because he nailed it. He pretty much nailed it. It was all about, as far as if you didn't have the funds or the resources to get it known and keep it in front of people long enough, it would be a struggle. Whereas now it's so much easier because it's so hard to fathom that back then there was no internet, there were no cell phones, there was no social media, whereas those three things catapults an idea within minutes. I mean, you can sketch an idea for a character and post it and have hundreds of followers saying, "When's this coming out?"
Yep.
That was not going to happen in 1985. You sketch something back then and show it to one person, be like, "Okay, it's all right. What is it?" So, yeah, man, big difference between then and now.
Got a couple questions on social media here. Brad wants to know, is that Purge animation available for viewing anywhere?
That's the truth. Yeah.
Some of it is on YouTube. We have been working on multiple Purge animation projects over the years. One of the ones that we actually are consistently producing or working to produce, i.e. gaining funding, is Astounding Adventures, which features Purge and other very prominent, I'm excited about it, characters by other Black creators. So I did put the Astounding Adventures net in the chat. And you can of course, you can go there and click and learn about that animation project. And on that site, or our site, there is animation clips of what we're working on.
That's so cool.
And I just dropped Reggie's Kickstarter link in there, and here come Roosevelt's links also. They are dropping in all the chats and all the various places we're broadcasting to. So go ahead and copy and paste those links, and you can purchase comic books, support Reggie's Kickstarter, and check out Astounding Adventures also. And then Brian wants to know, are we going to, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, are we going to get to see the rest of the Blackout unfold?
The answer is yes. You will. What's happening, or what has happened, unfortunately, with COVID, has put me and my production team way behind. So for all of those out there who've been waiting on their Blackout and Purge books, one, I apologize profusely. Unfortunately, with COVID, it really put a wrench in our works. But I will let you know that the books are being produced. We are, of course, unfortunately, we're behind schedule, but they are being produced. Blackout is one of them. Purge issue 2 is almost done artistically. And we're going to move on to lettering. And while we're doing that, Blackout is going to be in production as well, on the heels of Purge issue 2. So be patient with us and know that we are working hard to make sure that these books get into your hands.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. So we're a little over halfway through the show, guys. I just want to remind you out there watching, feel free to drop comments, questions in the chat. We will try to answer them or bring them up on screen just for everybody to see. And ask questions of these guys. They are here and they are at your disposal. I have plenty of questions that we're going to keep going through, but we'll see if anybody else out there has some questions. Also, you can support Indie Comics Dispatch at patreon.com/IndieComicsDispatch. That's all one word, and comics is with an X. You can become a patron for as little as $3 a month, and it really helps us. And pretty soon, that monthly fee will be tax deductible as we work through the 501c3 status. So again, that's patreon.com/IndieComicsDispatch, and you can support us on a monthly ongoing basis. So let's talk Black Comics now, because it seems to be Black Comics has always been around, but they're getting a lot of attention again. They're almost a renaissance going on right now. I think the digital age has helped that. And so what's changed since the 90s Black age of comics to this modern age that we're seeing now? From the time of Ania and some of those other early independent titles, from even Milestone in the 90s to now. I realize Milestone wasn't independent, but still.
I think the situation with this is the fact that from the old saying that the revolution will not be televised, the revolution is televised because of the fact of everything that's gone on in the past year, especially in the past few years, past several years. The attention towards the Black experience in this country has brought about, in a strange way, a surge of interest outside the Black community about the Black community, if that makes any sense. You know, everything from George Floyd to everything that's going on in this country. And all of a sudden now, it's almost kind of weird to say it, it's almost like, to a degree, cool to be Black, you know, and everybody wants to know about what's going on, what's coming out of your circle. What are y'all doing with your lives, and the creative aspect, and of course, and then to a degree, when it comes to being Black, there are certain things is nobody wants to touch, that we have to deal with every single day of our lives. But when it comes to entertainment and the media and comics and pop culture, I think it's a reflection of the fact that, we've been here for all these hundreds of years, and now all of a sudden the attention is on us and what we're about, what we stand for. It's like, who would have known now that, a good amount of comic books now are being, of course, comic books are constantly being now fodder for entertainment, for movies and television. But I was blown away when Regina King jumped on, the opportunity to do Bitterroot. I'm just like, I'm like a little kid geeking out, whereas like those years ago, back then in the 90s, that's been unheard of, It's sitting and watching, why am I escaping? I can't even think of it now. On HBO. Come on, y'all, help me.
Watchmen?
No, not Watchmen. Lovecraft Country.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, which of course was not
Mhm.
based on a comic book, but still, I mean, it's
Yeah.
Afrofuturism. You know, it's just
Mhm.
a lot of people that I know that aren't even black were just like, "Oh, did you see the latest episode of you know?" I'm like, "You saw that? Are we gonna have that conversation?" You know, but it's like it's just it's an exciting time, and yet at the same time, it brings about a way that people can be educated about a lot of things because a lot of the entertainment is infusing Black history in it. You
Mhm.
know, the beautiful part of Black history in this country and the very ugly, tragic side of Black history. I mean, I've seen at least 3 shows or movies that specifically had the Tulsa, you
Mhm.
know, tragedy infused in it. You know, and I mean, I had one of my daughters asking me, "Well, what's that? How come I didn't learn about that in school?" And I'm just like,
Mhm.
"Wow!" First time she hears about it is through a TV show, you know, through
Mhm.
entertainment. But it's a huge difference between now and the '90s. Huge difference, and I think it's because of the fact that because of media and and everything is so easily microwavably accessible. Whether it's something that happened down south or a tragedy out west or something positive. It resonates from real life experience into entertainment. It's art is now imitating life where it comes to the Black experience.
Well, I'll add to that and say, history is definitely important. We as Black people who were descendants of enslaved built this country, plain and simple. History shows it.
Hmm.
Um, and that in itself rarely gets highlighted or put a spotlight on. We talk about being slaves and so forth and running from massa and all of that, but we never talk about the many inventors.
Yeah,
The brother who designed Washington, D.C.
DC.
Mhm.
Um,
Hmm.
we never talk about those guys. Okay. So there's so much rich history that is always minimized when it comes to our contribution to this nation and the world. And keep in mind that even back in the early 1670s during the Black exploitation, it was clearly understood that Black sells. Okay.
Mhm.
But as time moved
Hmm.
on, we were faced with the dilemma when we're dealing with white executives who would tell me, well, we like Purge, this is back in the 90s, but he's too Black. We need to
Wow.
put more white people in there. Or
Wow.
why?
Yeah.
Why do
Yeah.
we have to do that? Well, we want to have
Oh
a
man.
multicultural experience. I don't think that's necessary. I'm not going to do that. That's not the story I want to tell. Now, whoosh, 20 plus years later, Black Panther hits. All black. Blackity black black. Okay? And it makes all of this money. And I'm looking back as a creator saying, I knew that 20 plus years ago.
20 something years ago.
Okay. So now again, it's all about the money a lot of times, but it proves that you can have a complete Black cast for the most part. Black
Yeah.
lead. And it
Mhm.
sells. You can't go back on that. You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Nope.
So now
Nope.
it makes sense that Regina would take on Bitterroot. Or now there's a Val Zod Superman, Black Superman
Mhm.
movie.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now everyone is looking for stuff like this. You
Hmm.
know, everyone is wanting something Black because now, even though they knew it back then, it's
Right.
been proven without a shadow of a doubt that you can have a prominent Black lead character that is actually about something, as they say,
Hmm.
not stereotypical, and it can be a success. And honestly, I personally believe that whether you're Black, white, or whatever, I think they were looking for something. I mean, I
Yeah.
love Superman, don't get me wrong, but come on. If all you see is the same type of derivative as far as content, you're going to be wanting
Mhm.
something different. And we
Yeah.
have that in spades if we just delve into our history,
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
nationwide and global. So that in itself was what I saw was the difference and the change as time moved on. And I believe that there's nothing really going to stop it now, other
Mm-mm.
than trying
No.
to hold the narrative. you know,
Yes.
some ways. But for me as a content creator, I have a story that I want to tell. I'm not going off the beaten path. I'm going to put my head down and head straight forward with what I want to share as far as the content that I want to produce and share with the world. And I think, you know, Reggie can confirm and attest to that as well, based on his journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
What piece of advice would you give a new creator, somebody who's just coming on the scene? They have an idea for a comic book, but they haven't pulled that trigger yet. What would you tell them? Your best piece of actionable advice?
I'm not trying to be funny. It's like sketch it and post it. No, from my view, it's just like, first of all, don't pay attention to naysayers. Don't pay attention to haters. For everything that someone creates, there's an audience. Whatever it is that you create, there's someone that it's going to resonate with. Always create something that's from your heart and that you're going to enjoy doing it, even if you don't get 1 red cent for it. Because when your passion pours into your art or into your creativity, then if the money comes, that's just the icing on the cake. Because of the fact that you're doing something that comes from you, and that you truly enjoy doing. With the fact that like I said, we're in the age of a microwavable society. You know, you've got YouTube, you've got tutorials, you've got, ways to create your art digitally if you don't want to do it old school like Roosevelt and I used to do, and just draw by hand and then ink it by hand and then scan it by hand. And now everything is just so available, digitally to create something that it's just so much easier now. But my thing is just, there's always more negative voices than positive voices when you are trying to show something to the world that you've held close to your heart for a while. And I believe that with all that's available online as far as tutorials and people giving free information on how to publish your own work or put it up on webtoons, the world is at your feet. The world is at your feet, whereas it wasn't at our feet, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We really had to struggle and strive to do what we wanted to do to get people to know about what we created. So, I mean, it's just amazing that you can do whatever you want now and have the wherewithal to do it. It's just so many different channels and different ways to go about doing it.
I mean, he said pretty much everything I was going to say, to be totally honest. I can only add that be willing to put in the work. And when I mean work, I mean emotional, mental, and physical work. Because it is a learning curve. But there's no excuse for ignorance in this age of technology and Google and so forth. And I would say be true to yourself, for one. And I'll share something that my father, who passed this past January, he would always say to me, thank you. He would always say to me, be the best basket weaver you could be. I didn't get that at first. But what he meant basically was, if you were going to be a basket weaver, but be the damnedest best basket weaver you can be,
right.
And you can sell it.
That's
because
right.
people are going to gravitate to you because you have greatness that you are creating, that you manifest from thought to something actually physical.
That's right.
So I've taken that with me throughout my life and applied it in areas that represent what I want to produce as far as comic books and content, to do my very best. And for all the artists and writers out there, I'll say this with utmost passion: be willing to take constructive criticism.
That's right.
Okay, because every artist is not going to be Frank Frazetta out the gate, or Alex Ross,
or John Byrne,
or John Byrne. So be willing to look at where you are, and be accepting of where you are, and strive for more, so that you always have a goal to reach as you make your journey toward greatness. You see?
That's right.
And I'm still on that journey. Okay, and I don't mind sharing my age, but I'm 55, going on 56.
I got you. Catch it by 3 years.
Got me 3 years.
Catch it
Okay.
by 3 years.
3 years?
3 years.
Well, there you go. You know, the journey never ends, and
It doesn't. It
and
doesn't.
that's one thing that I would share with people who are starting out, and to reach out to people like myself and Reggie. I mean, we're here, you know, as helping hands, so to speak, to share
That's
our
right.
knowledge, because we want everyone to be successful,
That's right.
regardless of your walk of life.
There's
And,
enough room out there for everybody. That's right.
Exactly. So I think that's important. Reach out to people who have done it, who are continually doing it, and who are willing to share in a way to
Yeah.
help others be successful.
Yeah.
Wonderful advice.
Well
Wonderful
said.
advice.
Well said. Mhm.
So who are some creators that you're following that you think other people should be following out there right now? Give some shout outs.
This young boy, as they say, young boy. This young boy that draws static shot, Nicholas Draper Ivy. That young man, I love his work. I love his work. He's been creating on Instagram for a few years now, just creating all these manga influenced Afrocentric characters, and then he got blessed with working on static now.
That's awesome.
Sanford Green, that of course does Bitterroot, but Sanford Green's got a webtoon feature. It's called
Really?
1000.
Very good, yes.
And it's got music. I mean, I was checking the strip out, and there's music in the background, like a soundtrack going while you're enjoying it. I'm just like, this is crazy.
That's awesome.
And then for me, a third would be, he's not even action artist, he's a writer and a publisher, but Tyler Forrest Martin, that does, Mega Woman and the Antagonists.
Yeah.
I'm just loving the way he's just weaving, this world of, his creations, very much like Roosevelt, man. It's like, Roosevelt, when I was, peeping your work, it's just like, I'm like, oh, I'm just like blown away. I'm like, man, how come I wasn't on this like a year ago? You know what I mean? And I'm just glad, better late than never.
I appreciate the support, my brother.
Better late than never. But those are like my three. I mean, we could go on and on, but those are like three for me, of just, writer and two artists.
That's amazing.
Well, for me, let me say this in case there's any confusion. I am not an artist. I'm a writer, publisher. I have done some design work, but I guarantee you wouldn't want to see it. But I have been blessed to work with a lot of wonderful artists throughout my tenure or career. So I personally give shout out to brother Mashindo Kumba.
Shindo.
You're not familiar with his work? You should be. If you're not, you've been
Shindo was, oh my gosh, he's been around for a minute.
Yeah, and his work it's always been phenomenal, but if you peep some of his recent work, blows your mind.
Yeah.
Literally blows your mind. You're talking about eye orgasms, you'll have that in his work. And then there's Brother Gray Williamson out of New York. Wonderful brother. His artwork, if not on par with Mashindo, it's very close.
Oh, wow.
I've peeped his work, so look up Gray Williamson. I believe one of his products or books is Valmar, I believe. So you might want to Google him. Wonderful artist and writer. He's been around for a minute as well. If not as long as Mashindo, maybe a little bit longer. And then there's Jay Kelly. He's a writer. His book or character is called The Brother. Check him out. He's on Facebook. But to throw in and toss in a writer that I have grown to love over the years. Of course, he's not a Black indie creator, but I love Frank Miller. I love his work back in the day with
always have
artists as well. But those are probably the three that I would say off the top of my head that I can't speak highly about those brothers. I mean, Shindo and Gray and Jay, great people as individuals, but definitely wonderful talent.
Cool.
Great suggestions. If you're out there watching this or listening to an after the fact on the podcast, go follow those people. Amazing creators, and really worth the follow. Guys, how can people follow you and support your work?
Roosevelt, you go first because this stuff
Okay.
is awesome.
Thank you, thank you. Well, you can follow me. I have my Amara Entertainment website where you can find all things Purge, Blackout. We'll be putting up, I guess, announcements when those books will be ready and out the door to my backers who've been very, very patient. Thank you again. Then there's Astounding Adventures, which is the animation project that we're working on for children, featuring Purge, Shadowboxer, the brother, his apprentice or protege Amani. That's something that we're working on as well. I do have some really great projects working with Purge, but I just don't have the liberty to share it just yet. But I will tell you, the announcement will be coming soon. It's going to be huge. I can only say that much about it right now.
So
but
cool.
again, Amari Entertainment, Astounding Adventures, and you can find me on Instagram under Roosevelt Pitt Purge, and you can find me on Twitter, Crimson Seed 1 on Twitter.
Nice.
And that's where you can find me, all things Purge, and get announcements about the projects that we're working on.
Very good. Very
That's
good.
beautiful. Oh, I love that.
Isn't
I
that?
love that Astounding Adventure. Oh my gosh, I'm there. Oh, I love it. Yeah, with me, well, of course, the Kickstarter. Thank you, Brett. Thank you so much. It's just really been a blessing because whenever you start a Kickstarter, you are real. You have a lot of doubts and a lot of, and I don't mean to quote Marvel, but you have a lot of what ifs. you know. but thank God that this is coming along pretty well. I got 7 days left, and I'm just excited that I've got so much support of my bringing this character back.
Congratulations.
And thank you so much. It was quite a journey because it's been 30 years since the last issue of Shuriken was released. 91. Matter of fact, November of 1991 was the last issue of a Shuriken book. And so this one will be released November of this year, exactly 30 years later. And, there was a situation where this character was, for the many years I thought was actually in possession of Marvel, that Marvel owned it. But after doing my homework over this last few months, I realized I was able to get her back. So I'm very excited. But that's the Kickstarter page. And then my personal page is reggiebyers.com, where you can purchase Afro Boy and Puff Girl, my children's book called MVP Kamala and Me, children's book about celebrating the nomination of Kamala Harris, but not just that, but the majority of the book tells you about all of the Black women in American history whose shoulder she stood on to get to where she is. I'm like having a brain freeze here. But hey, better yet. Boom!
There it is.
That's the book right there. Yeah.
Right.
So it's like the little girl in the children's book. She pretty much just goes through a roll call of all the women that paved the way, such as Sojourner Truth and of course Harriet Tubman. One more, Mary McLeod Bethune. So wonderful little children's book. Not only just for girls, but for young men as well. But a children's book that tells little girls that you can be anything you want to be. So at reggiebyers.com, you can get that. And you can get the my babies, Afro Boy and Puff Girl. And I'm just having a ball.
When I'm there, I'm going to go and support, brother.
Thank you.
The website. I will go and grab a few books from you, my man.
Thank you. Ms. Roosevelt.
Well, Brad wants to know when are we going to see more Crescent? Crescent
was created by myself and Aaron Beatty. And Crescent, right now, we are in the talks with a publisher who is going to pick her up. And you'll see that in the beginning of next year. And Crescent, this is 25 years. This year is 25 years since I put out that 1-0 issue of Crescent.
Wow.
And we're going to reprint that in color and then just do brand new adventures of the only, I don't know of any other Egyptian female superhero that I know of, other than her. Isis doesn't count. From back in the day, and she don't count.
You mentioned Aaron. He runs a great Instagram page called The Official Heurary. I think
yes.
It's follow that. It's a great page for lots of inspiration.
Amazing.
Roosevelt.
Yes.
Are we ever going to see an Ania reunion or anything like that?
I have to say, not at this time. My fellow Ania members, honestly, Brett, I haven't heard from them since the 90s.
Really?
I actually tried to Google them and search on Facebook, and constantly comes up empty. I mean, I'm not being facetious here, but I really don't know who's alive and who's not. I mean,
it's like that, and it's like that. It really is.
It's just been me continuing, again, this journey of publishing. I would love to do that. I would love to be able to bring us together and do a collective volume of news stories, and I think people would support it, just like they supported the milestone.
Yeah, I think so.
But unfortunately, I really cannot say that that's even on the horizon. But if it does, you're one of the first to know.
All right. All right.
Cool.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. You guys, while they're watching, the links are in the chat, but please search these gentlemen out, support their projects. So you can go to amarentertainment.com and order Roosevelt's books and see the ones that are coming soon. You can go to Kickstarter and support Reggie Byers. You can also go to his site and order his other books that are already out. And if you're like me, you scour eBay for both these gentlemen's books and buy them whenever they come up. So guys, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's a great opener for this season of Broadcast from the Dispatch, and really set the bar high for future episodes. I love having you guys on, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Having us, and we'll hopefully look forward to coming back.
Yes,
all right.
Absolutely.
That sounds great.
Wonderful.
Everybody out there, we will be back again next Thursday. I'm still saying Wednesday because last year we were on Wednesdays. Next Thursday is our new day at 8:30 p.m. Still our time. Next week we have Jibba Mole Anderson and the Blaxus on, the new group of creators banding together. So, yep. Tune in for that one because we will be here next week talking with them. At the end of the month, another great creator. John Jennings will be on to discuss his plethora of work and scholarship within the Black comic book community. So tune in the rest of this month and continuing on forward. Again, if you supported the Kickstarter and haven't heard from us, check, because you probably have heard from us and you just haven't responded. Guys out there, we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Right.